Our next speaker will be talking about the rise of blockchain, powered payment and financial services in Africa. His name is Ernest Mbenkum, the founder and CEO of Interstellar, and he's also the founder of the Bantu Blockchain Foundation. And I'd like to welcome Ernest on stage for his presentation right now. Thank you.
I'd like to start by thanking Sonia and Theo for inviting me here to speak and for bringing all these amazing people to come and be part of this incredible event that continues to inspire me and enrich the ecosystem that we all share. So today I'll be discussing two key innovative projects that are happening in Africa, for Africa, and hopefully will become an example for the rest of the world. But before I start, I'd like to touch on what's happening in Africa. So the technology has already revolutionized a lot of industries in South Africa, in Nigeria, East Africa, and it shows a lot of promise. And the reason why there's such a high demand for adoption is because 66% or more of the population remains unbanked. And we find that this technology is now opening doors and allowing, it's more inclusive, if you may, and democratizing the whole ecosystem and helping a lot of these unbanked and financially excluded people to begin to come on board. And we are also seeing that these services are being led by the massive use of mobile phones and devices in Africa. And through the GSMA, it says that there are about 747 million subscribers. And users are beginning to build applications and services that connect the mobile services with the blockchain infrastructure and is raising and creating more adoption. Recent data indicates that some of the fastest areas of growth are the wallet, services, and payments. And as the last picture the speaker mentioned, and yesterday, there's this whole rise of P2P payments, which are seeming to be more attractive for most users. And ultimately, we are seeing a shift away from traditional banking payment apps to wallets. So, and this trend, we believe, is going to continue to grow. The latest data by McKinsey & Company shows that within the last 2 years, over 5,000 companies are basically entering this space, and more than half of them are fintechs. And they seek to disrupt and take advantage of many of these innovations that we are seeing today. And with the young demographic that Africa has, we are seeing that there's more awareness and more interest in this space. Now, what's the impact again? So we are seeing that it's going to help with, in the case of trade finance, because I don't know if we know about this, but intra-Africa trade is less than 15% right now. And it's very important that we leverage this new technology to make all of this possible. So we know that blockchain already facilitates cheaper, faster cross-border payments, eliminates all the costly paper processes, inefficiencies, middlemen, etc., and basically drives more financial inclusion. Now, to talk about some key use cases, I'll start by mentioning the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which went live in 2020, and that created the largest free trade block in the world by number of companies. Underneath that, it led to Afri-Exim Bank to put together a project in 2019 called the PanAfrican Payment and Settlement System, or PAPS. PAPS went live in 2022, January, in Accra. And while the PAPS is a centralized system, the leadership has the foresight and vision to begin to look at how blockchain can be used to make this service more inclusive. Now, at the present stage, as of last week, PAPS has 9 central banks, 50 commercial banks included, and also 7 national payment switches. And how is this all linked to blockchain? About 3.5 years ago, we were invited by Africa's first unicorn called InterSwitch to come and help them to begin to migrate their infrastructure towards a blockchain-based solution to facilitate cross-border payments. So we've been developing these solutions with them, and we're happy to announce that it's going to be going online next month in April. It was originally called the PanAfrican Payment Ecosystem, and it uses a very unique exchange rate mechanism engine. And this engine allows us to basically send money to any country in Africa without using any central currency like the US dollar or the euro, which is a problem for many countries trying to source these dollars. So how that works is that there are key players in the ecosystem. You have the users, merchants, payment service providers, the banks obviously, liquidity providers, and the gateways. What is key here is the liquidity providers. So those of you who are familiar with trading and exchanges, you have an order book. So these liquidity providers will come in and place their buy and sell orders, rand to naira, naira to Ghana cedi, Ghana cedi to Kenyan shilling. And the more liquidity providers come into this system, the more we have available. So an end user using a mobile app through a bank or other fintech company wants to send money from, say, South Africa to Kenya. He opens the app, clicks on how much he wants to send. Behind the scenes, it goes into the exchange rate mechanism engine, looks at the order book, finds the cheapest, most efficient rate, and then responds with an amount and a fee, and the user clicks rest, and the payment goes through. This happens within 2 to 5 seconds. It's instant. Money is not being held for 2 to 5 days. Settlement is instant because the system is all being done on-chain. Now, with where this is going, at the moment, InterSwitch Group is going into the pilot with EcoBank, UBA, and other Pan-African banks. And ultimately, these are all plugging into PAPs, which will make this system now universal across the continent. There will also be the introduction of stable coins, which again are sovereign currencies on blockchain. And we believe that at some point in the near future, they will also have a unique settlement token or index coin for the continent, which will be used universally, again, to reduce dependency on foreign currencies. And later on, through the tokenization of Africa's rich resources, mineral wealth, this will also play a significant role in this platform. The next one I want to touch on is a relatively new project called the Blink Network. This network is made up of a consortium of banks and financial institutions and payment companies, initially in Nigeria, but it will be expanding across Africa. And this was created to address the challenges faced by the banking industry due to payment turnarounds, slow payments, delayed payments, cancelled payments. For those of you who were following what was happening in Nigeria a few weeks ago with the elections, they adopted the e-Naira, so they moved away from cash and put a lot of pressure on their system called NIPS, the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System. And a lot of payments weren't going through, and they were facing a lot of challenges. This solution intends to address that problem. And how does it do that? All of the banks use their core banking software solutions. This core banking will plug into a middleware, and that middleware plugs into a blockchain cluster. And that blockchain is made up of validator nodes. Each bank will run a node. Each bank or financial institution that is part of this network will be running a validator node, and this blockchain that they are using becomes the single source of truth. So payments will be instant, they will be real time, and throughout our tests over the last 2-3 years, while the other systems were failing on a daily basis, we did not have a single day of downtime. So we are very confident that when this system goes live, it's going to do very well. And it has the support of the Central Bank of the Nigeria and other central banks that are coming up. So what are the key benefits? To customers, improve customer service and create a more stable platform. To the banks, much lower transaction fees, simplified use of resources. It costs them less because with blockchain infrastructure, it's much cheaper to run and operate. And it will provide a revenue generation opportunity for these banks because they all share it, all the consortium partners, and create more customer satisfaction and retention. And of course, with blockchain, it's public, open, and you have proper auditing and tracking. And for the industry, it makes them stand out more, look more responsible, and also more increased confidence from end users and customers. And obviously, scaling across Africa, because infrastructure is one thing that we've had a challenge with in Africa. We are often depending on foreign-built solutions, and we don't have our own locally built solutions. And so we feel that this infrastructure, the Blink network, is going to be something that's going to change the way we look at the continent, and we are very excited about it. So these are some of the consortium members. So it was started by my company, Interstellar, together with Africa FinTech Foundry. For those of you who don't know AFF, this is where the likes of Paystack and Flutterwave were born. And we've been working closely with the Access Bank, Sterling, Central Bank of Nigeria, and others. And we are looking forward to partnering with other banks across the continent to grow this network. So what is behind this technology? As you can imagine, one of the biggest challenges we have in Africa is siloed systems and interoperability, as we've discovered. We have so many solutions, but they're all working in silos. And for those of you who are familiar with the Stargate series, at Interstellar, we created something called Stargate to allow you to move between different payment universes and ecosystems without depending on one, so to speak. So what we've done with our core technology is to build a non-custodial, security-first, and high-performance system that sits on multi-cloud infrastructure, multi-organizations, and it runs globally in a way that it can never be turned off unless you essentially attack every single node on the planet. And we have a suite of APIs and services that are custom built to service these banks and other financial institutions. This is sort of a high-level diagram for this. So at its core, we have our blockchain layer. We are blockchain agnostic. So as blockchain evolves, we use different protocols to provide more efficiency to our customers and partners. And at the core of it, we have on the top right-hand corner, the middleware that talks to the financial institutions. On the far right, we have our compliance KYC AML engine. At the center, we have a universal wallet that we've built because, again, in Africa, there's a major issue with identity. So with our universal wallet, your wallet can be your fingerprint, your retinal scan, your national ID card, your NTN's phone number, your passport, because we think that everyone deserves to be included in this ecosystem. And so long as we can identify you, this universal wallet we've developed is ultimately a solution to those who've been excluded for so long. And we have a suite of network tools that support this, a dashboard, an explorer, a navigator, a laboratory for developers to use. And obviously there are APIs that anyone can also come into the system and plug in and use it. So it is this infrastructure which is helping to power some of these solutions. As you may be aware, Nigeria in 2021, October 25th, became the first African country to go live with a CBDC. So the same day that we went live, they reached out to us to come and help them to evolve. So the front end was rebuilt by Interstellar, and we are currently in discussions with them to continue to evolve the back-end infrastructure to make it more resilient. Who are we? Interstellar is Africa's leading enterprise blockchain infrastructure company, and we work with public sector enterprises to build and manage the best DeFi solutions. We started off as an R&D lab in 2017 in Cameroon and Canada, and we are currently based in Cameroon where we have our math scientists coming up with all these crazy ideas. Nigeria for operations, Ghana for regulatory and governance, Seychelles where we have our holding company, Canada for AI and IoT, and we are basically planning to expand into South Africa and Kenya and other parts of the continent. Who are we serving? Currently talking to multiple central banks, financial institutions, payment institutions, and identity service providers. And our core team has been in this space since the early days of blockchain, almost 14 years ago. And we bring together decades of experience in this space. We've worked at companies like Apple, the Central Bank of Nigeria, Cisco, Dell Technologies. Some of our team members deployed over 80% of the banking infrastructure in Africa. They've worked at MTN, so they understand scaling and management. And our advisory board is made up of some of the leading CEOs here in Africa. So before I jump off, I want to share something personal. So in 2019, I came across 2009, I came across something called Bitcoin on a forum called Bitcoin Talk. And I deployed it on my laptop. I thought it was a virus and heating it up. And I got fascinated. But I wasn't so much interested in the token itself. I was more interested in how this could impact Africa and reduce the cost of doing business. And in 2011, I met a person called Anthony Diorio, who became a good friend of mine, because I'm based in Toronto for the last 18 years. And he reached out. I didn't know who he was. Can you help me? Can we work together in this Bitcoin thing? And I gave him his first Bitcoin. Anthony, through the time we spent, put together a team in Toronto, about 5-6 of us. One of the people that joined was a young man called Vitalik Buterin, whom I also gave a token, this time a physical version of the Bitcoin, and we began talking. And it led to something called Decentral and ultimately the Revolution in Canada, and it gave birth to something called Ethereum in 2012, which went live in 2015. And I was very pleased that about last month, on the 23rd, that Vitalik came to Ghana because he's seen Africa as the future. So I often imagine if I had not spoken to Anthony to teach him, to show him this technology, what would have happened? Because Anthony, being an entrepreneur, built a platform that operated briefly, that gave him funding to bring in Vitalik, who dropped out of Waterloo, to join this revolution. And obviously, as you all know, Ethereum is now one of the biggest protocols that we have today. So we've contributed to the space, Ripple, Stellar, and others, and we look forward to partnering with all of you. Thank you very much.